We are going to work on solving equations today, and we're going to start by just reviewing what you guys did last year, which was solving a two-step equation, and then we're going to work on equations that have variables on both sides. That's our concentration today. So our first example is really a review of what you guys did last year. So let's say we had negative 3a minus 6 equals 18. All right, so whenever we solve, what we're trying to do is to get the variable isolated. So we want to get the a by itself. And the way we do that is we are going to pull apart these other numbers. And the way to pull these other numbers apart is to cancel them out. So what we do to cancel them out is the opposite. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start furthest from the a and then work up to it. So I need to get rid of this minus 6, and the way I get rid of a negative 6 is with a positive 6. So these two things are going to cancel each other out because the negative 6 plus 6 is 0. But you know the rule in math is whatever you do to one side you have to do the other, or else it's not equal. So now we end up with negative 3a on the left and 24 on the right. So now we need to pull apart this negative 3, and the way to separate this negative 3 with the a is to do the opposite of what it is. And this right here is multiplication, and the opposite of multiplication would be division. So now the negatives cancel each other out and the 3's cancel each other out. But again, whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So then we can go ahead and evaluate this. 24 divided by negative 3 would be a negative 8. Now, the way we check our solution is to fill it back in. So I think that a is negative 8. So I'm just going to run over here and do a quick check. So I'm going to do, instead of negative 3 times a, I'm going to do negative 3 times negative 8 minus 6. And if I did it right, I'll get 18. Well, that's 24. And remember, we multiply before we subtract. And we do, in fact, get 18, so it worked. So the solution for this is that a equals negative 8. All right. That is what you guys did last year, and that's called a two-step equation. What we are going to do is called variables on both sides. So, variables on both, excuse me, both sides. Okay, so our equations will look something like this. So, for example 2, 6x minus 4 equals 4x plus 4. Okay, so again, we want to solve for x. So what that means is that we need to get x by itself. So the problem is that we have two x's. So what we're going to have to do is get the two x's together and then get the x by itself. I usually bring my x's together on the left side. It doesn't matter, but I usually bring them on the left. So I'm going to take this 4x off of this side, and the way to get this 4x off of this side is to subtract it. Because 4x minus 4x will make the 4x on that side disappear, which means I'll only have a 4 on the right side of the equal sign. But you know the deal, whatever we do to one side, we do the other. So I need to subtract 4x from this side. And since it's like terms with the 6x, I'm going to put it under there. So now if I subtract 4x over here from the 6x, that's going to leave me with 2x minus 4. So now this is a problem that looks just like what we were doing up here. So first thing I need to do is get rid of this minus 4, and I can get rid of a negative 4 by using a positive 4. So those will cancel out. But whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. So now I have 2x equals 8. To disconnect the 2 and the x, I need to use division because that's the opposite of multiplication. But whatever you do to one side, you have to do the other side. That's going to cancel, and now I can answer this, and I will get that x equals 4. If I want to check this, then what I'm going to do is go back up to the top, and I'm going to fill in a 4 for x. So this is going to be 6 times 4. So that would be 24 minus 4, which would equal 20. Then I need to go over here and fill in 4 in place of x. So this is going to be 4 times 4, which is going to be 16 plus 4, which also equals 20. So I got the same answer on both sides, which it says I should, because the two sides should be equal. So now I know that my solution is x equals 4. All right, let's try one more. For example number 3, let's do, move this out of the way a little bit. So example 3. How about 9 minus 6x equals negative 3 minus 8x? All right, so this might not be written the way that you're used to, but it actually doesn't matter at all. We're still going to work the problem the same way. I always start with my variables first, and like I told you, I usually bring this over to the other side. So in order to get rid of a negative 8x, I need to use a positive 8x. So those two things will cancel, so the only thing I have left on the right is negative 3. But again, whatever you do to one side, you have to do the other side. So since I added 8x over here, I have to add 8x over here. And since it's like terms with the 6x, I'm going to put it right there. So now when I combine this together, I get 9 plus 2x equals negative 3. All right, so there we are back at a two-step equation. So remember, we're trying to get the x by itself. So I need to get rid of a 9. And the way I get rid of a 9 would be with a minus 9 or a negative 9, because 9 minus 9, that will cancel. And again, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I'm going to come over here and subtract 9 over there. So now I have 2x on the left, and on the right, I get a negative 12. So to disconnect the 2 and the x, I need to do the opposite. This is multiplication, so I need to divide by 2. And whatever you do to one side, you do to the other, which is going to cause those 2's to cancel. So now I'm just going to evaluate this, and negative 12 divided by 2 would be a negative 6. So this is my solution. Now, I am not requiring you to do the check step, but I would always go back and just double check my work, especially if it was a test or a quiz. So I'm going to take negative 6 and go back up here. If I fill in a negative 6 right here, then I need to do 9 plus 36, because a negative 6 times a negative 6 would be a positive 36. And when I add those two together, I get 45. I'm going to go over here and fill in a negative 6. So this would be negative 3 plus 48, because a negative 8 times a negative 6 would be a positive 48. And if I combine those two together, I also get 45. So I'm not going to require the check step, but like I said, I would do this if it was a test or a quiz, because then when you turn your paper in, you know you're turning in a perfect paper. All right, that covers it. If you need to go back and redo any of our examples or replay the video, please do, and then you can go ahead and pick up today's assignment.